My name is Hannah, and for most of my life, I've been an artist. First as a quiet observer, sketching in notebooks, then as a student lost in paint and clay, and now as someone whose work hangs in galleries, telling stories without words. But the most complex story, the one that shaped every brushstroke, is my own. It began the day I found out what my own father truly thought of me, a discovery that was less a single moment and more like unearthing a series of buried chests, each containing a more shocking truth than the last. For years, I was the ghost in his new life, the inconvenient reminder of a past he was eager to repaint. I lived with a quiet ache, a constant question mark hovering over my heart. Little did I know that this journey of quiet pain would lead to a revelation so profound it would not only redefine my understanding of family, but also hand me the brush to paint my own vibrant future. This isn't just a tale of betrayal, it's a testament to the unexpected places we find strength and the undeniable truth that family is more than blood. It's about who shows up. If you've ever felt overlooked, misunderstood by those who should know you best, or like an outsider in your own family, then please comment and subscribe. You're not alone. Trust me, if you're someone who believes in the enduring power of love and the fierce necessity of self-worth, this story will change how you see family forever. I was 10 years old when the world as I knew it fractured. It wasn't a loud shattering, more like a slow, ominous crack appearing in the foundation of our seemingly perfect suburban home. The announcement of my parents' divorce was delivered in hushed tones in our sun-drenched living room, the same room where just months before my dad John had swung me around, my laughter echoing off the familiar floral wallpaper. "Sweetheart," Mom began, her voice trembling slightly, her eyes usually sparkling with warmth, now clouded with a sadness that seemed to seep into the very air I breathed. Dad sat beside her, stiff and uncharacterable, his gaze fixed on a point somewhere beyond my head. He mumbled something about adult things and still loving me very much, but his words felt hollow, like pebbles dropped into a vast, empty well. My childhood up until that point had been painted in the warm, comforting hues of stability. Dad was the fun parent, the one who'd build elaborate Lego castles and tell outlandish bedtime stories. Mom was the steady anchor, her presence a constant reassurance, her hands always ready with a hug or to mend a scraped knee. I was their only child, a quiet, observant girl with a wild imagination, already filling sketchbooks with fantastical creatures and dreamy landscapes. My early memories are sensory blurs. The smell of Dad's pipe tobacco mixed with sawdust from his workshop, the taste of Mom's chocolate chip cookies, the sight of them dancing in the kitchen to old records. I remember Dad praising a particularly lopsided clay bird I made in art class, telling me I had the gift. Those words became a small, glowing ember I carried within me. The divorce wasn't just a separation of two people. It was the cleaving of my world. Our family home, the one with the big oak tree in the front yard I'd climbed countless times, was sold. Mom and I moved into a small rented apartment on the other side of town. It was clean and bright, and Mom tried her best to make it cheerful, but it always felt temporary, borrowed. The floral wallpaper of my old life was replaced with plain, impersonal beige. Dad moved into a bachelor pad, and our weekends together, initially filled with forced fun, soon became strained. He seemed distracted, his phone buzzing constantly. Sometimes he'd cancel last minute. "Something came up, kiddo." Each cancellation was a small chip at the pedestal I'd placed him on. One of the first glaring instances of injustice, a foreshadowing of what was to come, occurred during my 5th grade talent show. I'd spent weeks practicing a monologue, my heart set on impressing him. Mom was there, front row, beaming. Dad's seat remained empty. He called later, a rushed apology about a work emergency. I found out later from a mutual acquaintance he'd been on a date. The praise for my gift now felt like a distant echo. Then came Patricia. Dad introduced her about a year after the divorce. She was all polished surfaces, perfect blonde hair, gleaming teeth, a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She had a daughter, Megan, a girl my age, with a perpetually unimpressed expression and an air of entitlement that was palpable even to my 11-year-old self. Megan was everything I wasn't. Loud, demanding, and seemingly adept at wrapping adults around her little finger. My dad, John, who I remembered as strong and independent, seemed to transform around Patricia. He became softer, more malleable, eager to please her. His attention, already diluted, now had a new primary focus. Patricia was, I suppose, what people called a woman who knew what she wanted. And what she wanted, it seemed, was my father, his resources, and a life where her daughter was the undisputed princess. Mom, bless her, tried to navigate this new dynamic with grace, always encouraging me to be polite, to give them a chance. She was and remains a woman of incredible resilience, her love for me a fierce, unwavering beacon. She worked tirelessly at her job, an administrative position at a local clinic, to provide for us, never once complaining, though I often saw the exhaustion in her eyes. She was the one who noticed my artistic talent burgeoning, who scraped together money for art supplies and extra classes, who proudly displayed every clumsy painting and sculpture. My paternal grandparents were distant figures even before the divorce, living several states away. They were old-fashioned, a bit stiff, and seemed to defer to my father's judgment on most things. I don't recall them ever questioning his choices or offering much in the way of emotional support to me. Aunt Sarah, Dad's younger sister, was different. She was warm, a little bohemian, and had always had a soft spot for me. She lived in another city, but would call occasionally, her voice a comforting reminder of the family I once knew. She'd ask about my art, listen to my stories, and I sensed even then a subtle disapproval of Patricia's growing influence, though she never voiced it directly to me at that age. The favoritism wasn't immediate or overtly cruel at first. It was a slow, insidious creep. When Dad, Patricia, and Megan moved into a new house, a large, ostentatious place Patricia picked out, my old bedroom furniture was relegated to the guest room, which was supposedly my room when I stayed over. But soon, Megan's clothes started appearing in the closet, her posters on the walls. When I questioned it, Dad would say, "Oh, Megan just needed a little extra space. You don't mind, do you, sweetie?" His tone brooked no argument. My gift, my art, was now just Hannah's little hobby. Megan's fledgling attempts at ballet, however, were lauded as signs of prodigious talent. The stage was being set meticulously and deliberately for me to become a footnote in my own father's life. The warm embers of his early praise were slowly, painfully being extinguished. The years that followed my father's remarriage settled into a predictable, painful pattern. Each visit to his house was a masterclass in feeling like an unwelcome guest. The home itself, so different from the cozy chaos of my childhood, felt like Patricia's showroom, pristine, impersonal, and cold. My designated guest room became increasingly less mine. One weekend, I arrived to find my art supplies carefully packed in a box shoved into the back of the closet, replaced by Megan's overflowing collection of dance trophies. "Oh, honey," Patricia said with that saccharine smile when I found them, "Megan needed more space to practice her routines. Your things were just gathering dust." My father, standing nearby, just nodded in agreement. "It makes sense, Hannah. Megan's really serious about her dancing." My achievements, academic or artistic, were met with lukewarm responses if acknowledged at all. I won a regional art competition in 8th grade, a significant accomplishment that came with a small scholarship. I called Dad, buzzing with excitement. "Oh, that's nice, Hannah," he said, his voice distant. Then, without missing a beat, "Guess what? Megan got the lead in her dance school's production of The Nutcracker. We're all so proud." The "we" hung in the air, a clear demarcation. They were a unit. I was an addendum. Holidays became exercises in quiet endurance. Christmas at Dad's meant watching Megan unwrap a mountain of expensive gifts. New electronics, designer clothes, trips to dance intensives, while I received something generic, an impersonal gift card or a sweater that was clearly Patricia's taste, not mine. One year, for my 16th birthday, Dad and Patricia took me out for a quick perfunctory dinner at a chain restaurant. A week later, Megan's 16th birthday was a lavish affair, a catered party at their house with a DJ and dozens of her friends. I wasn't explicitly uninvited, but the invitation felt like an afterthought, and I spent the evening feeling like a spectator at someone else's life, a life my father was gleefully funding and celebrating. The psychological impact was a slow erosion of my self-worth. His indifference became a mirror reflecting a distorted image of myself, unimportant, uninteresting, undeserving. My internal monologue was a relentless loop. Why doesn't he see me? What did I do wrong? Am I not good enough? I'd spend hours in my room at Mom's apartment, sketching, painting, pouring all that confusion and hurt onto canvas. Art became my refuge, the only place where I felt truly seen, even if only by myself. Mom, bless her, saw the pattern. She never badmouthed Dad, but she'd hold me close after a particularly disappointing weekend visit, her quiet strength a balm to my wounded spirit. "He loves you, Hannah," she'd say. "He just has a funny way of showing it sometimes." But even she couldn't completely shield me from the sting. It was during these tumultuous teenage years that David came into our lives. Mom met him through a friend. David was unassuming kind with laugh lines around his eyes and a genuine interest in others. He wasn't trying to replace my father. He was simply present. He'd ask about my art, listen intently to my rambling explanations of my latest projects, and even framed a few of my pieces for our apartment. He remembered my art shows, my competitions, and his quiet pride was a steady warmth I desperately needed. One particularly telling dialogue unfolded when I was 17. I'd been accepted into a summer art program at a prestigious out-of-state university, a huge step for me. I needed to discuss the tuition fees with Dad. I called him, my stomach churning with anxiety. "Dad, I got into the summer program at SCAD." I tried to keep my voice bright. "SCAD? Oh, that art thing. That's nice, Hannah," he replied, a familiar disinterest lacing his tone. "Listen, is this going to cost a lot? Patricia and I are planning a big trip for Megan's graduation present, a European dance tour. Things are a bit tight." My heart sank. "It is a bit expensive," I admitted, "but it's a really big opportunity." "Well, we'll see," he said dismissively. "Megan's tour is a once-in-a-lifetime thing for her. She's so talented, everyone says so. Maybe you can get a scholarship for that art camp." The comparison, the casual dismissal, it was all so familiar. I hung up, tears stinging my eyes. Later that evening, I was sketching listlessly when David sat down beside me. "Tough call with your dad?" he asked gently. I nodded, unable to speak. He looked at my sketch, a dark, swirling, abstract piece. "He doesn't see what a gift you have, does he?" It wasn't a question. "Your mom and I were talking. If you want to go to that program, Hannah, we'll make it work. You deserve to chase your dreams." His words, so simple, so direct, were like a lifeline. He wasn't my father, but he was acting like one. The pattern of dismissal continued. My high school graduation was another benchmark. Dad, Patricia, and Megan arrived late, missing my valedictorian speech, a fact Patricia later dismissed with, "Oh, speeches are always so dull, aren't they?" They left early, citing a prior commitment related to one of Megan's dance rehearsals. I watched them go, a cold knot forming in my stomach. Mom and David were there, of course, their faces beaming with pride. David even whistling loudly when I received my diploma. The most recent major disappointment before I left for college was when I had my first solo art exhibition at a local community gallery. It was a small affair, but monumental for me. I'd poured my heart and soul into the pieces. Mom and David helped me hang everything, their enthusiasm infectious. I sent an invitation to Dad. He RSVP'd, yes. The night of the opening, I kept glancing at the door. He never showed. He texted later, "So sorry, kiddo. Megan had a sudden dance emergency. Sprained ankle. Had to rush her to the doctor, you understand." I later saw photos on Megan's social media from that same evening. She was at a party with friends, her ankle miraculously healed. The lie was so blatant, so careless. It was then that a new feeling began to stir beneath the hurt, a simmering resentment, a dawning realization that this wasn't just neglect, it was a choice. A continuous, deliberate choice. And with that realization, a tiny, almost imperceptible shift began within me. The desire for his approval started to wane, replaced by a nascent determination to prove my worth to myself, not to him. College was my escape, a chance to breathe air untainted by the suffocating dynamics of my father's new family. I threw myself into my art, my studies thriving in an environment where my passion was not just tolerated but celebrated. I was hundreds of miles away, but the emotional tether to my father, though frayed, still existed. A part of me, the hopeful 10-year-old, still yearned for him to see me, to finally acknowledge the daughter he was so casually discarding. But each attempt at connection only seemed to widen the chasm. The waves of escalating conflict didn't cease with distance. They merely changed form. My first significant college art show, a juried exhibition where one of my paintings won an honorable mention, was a milestone I desperately wanted to share. I called Dad, inviting him, offering to help with travel arrangements. "Oh, Hannah, that sounds lovely," he'd said, "but it's just terrible timing. Megan has her big spring recital that same weekend, and Patricia would be devastated if I missed it. It's her solo, you know." The familiar excuse, the familiar prioritization. He sent a generic congratulations card a week later addressed to Hannah with no last name, as if I were a casual acquaintance. The painting he'd missed depicted a young girl slowly fading into the wallpaper of a brightly lit room, a room where another child danced in the spotlight. Then there was the ever-present financial disparity. I pieced together scholarships, worked part-time jobs, and relied on Mom and David's unwavering, though often stretched, support. Meanwhile, Megan's lavish lifestyle funded by Dad was a constant, unspoken rebuke. She'd post on social media about her new convertible, a graduation gift designer, shopping sprees, and expensive dance workshops in New York and LA. Once during my sophomore year, my laptop died mid-finals week. Panicked, I called Dad hesitantly, asking if he could lend me some money for a replacement. "Money's a bit tight right now, Hannah," he'd sighed. "Patricia's redecorating the sunroom, and you know how these things add up. And Megan needs new point shoes every other week. Those things are ridiculously expensive." The next day, Megan posted a photo of herself with a brand new top-of-the-line camera, a gift just because, from her amazing dad. The sting of that casual cruelty was sharp, visceral. Holidays became a source of dread. I tried for the first couple of years to go home to Dad's for Thanksgiving or Christmas, driven by a lingering sense of obligation and that stubborn, foolish hope. Each visit was worse than the last. The house was entirely Patricia and Megan's domain, every decorative touch, every family photo erasing any trace of my existence. I was a polite stranger navigating conversations that revolved solely around Megan's achievements, Patricia's social calendar, and Dad's eager agreement with them both. One Christmas Eve, Patricia orchestrated a family photo. She posed Dad, Megan, and herself, then as an afterthought said, "Oh, Hannah, dear, perhaps you can squeeze in on the end." The photo, when I later saw it, showed me awkwardly appended to their perfect triangle, an outsider looking in. It was during one of these strained holiday visits that Aunt Sarah, Dad's sister, pulled me aside. She'd always been an observer, but now seeing the blatant disregard up close, her usual tact seemed to fray. "Honey," she said, her voice low and conspiratorial, "your father, he's not the man he used to be. Patricia has him wrapped around her little finger. She fills his head with nonsense, makes him think you're being difficult if you ask for anything or express any unhappiness." She paused, then added, "She subtly puts you down even when you're not here, and Megan just laps it all up. Don't let them grind you down, Hannah. You're worth more than they treat you." And her words were a painful validation, confirming the insidious dynamics I'd long suspected. But college also brought light into the shadows. I met Michael. He was in the architecture program, thoughtful kind, with a quick wit and a grounding presence. He saw my art, truly saw it, and saw the pain I carried. He listened without judgment as I haltingly shared stories of my father, Patricia, and Megan. His own family was a boisterous, loving Italian clan who welcomed me with open arms, their easy affection a stark, wonderful contrast to the conditional acceptance I'd known. Michael became my rock, my staunchest ally. The emotional breaking point, the moment the frayed tether finally snapped, came during my senior year. I was graduating summa cum laude, a significant achievement I'd worked incredibly hard for. Mom and David were, of course, planning to attend. I called Dad, my voice carefully neutral, to invite him. "Graduation? Oh, right, that's coming up," he said, distracted. "Listen, Hannah, that same weekend is Megan's 21st birthday. Patricia's throwing a huge bash for her at the country club. All our friends will be there. It's a really big deal." "Dad," I said, my voice dangerously quiet, "it's my college graduation." I know, and I'm proud of you, I really am," he rushed on. "But Megan would be crushed if I wasn't at her party. It's her 21st, you understand, don't you? Maybe we can do a little dinner for you when you're back in town." I didn't understand. Or rather, I understood perfectly. He had made his choice again. This wasn't just a missed event, it was a fundamental statement of my value in his life. 0. "No, Dad," I said, a strange calmness descending over me. "Don't worry about it. It's fine." I hung up before he could reply, the click of the receiver sounding like a door slamming shut on a part of my life. The hurt was still there, a deep, aching wound, but something new was solidifying, a cold, hard anger, and beneath it a nascent sense of liberation. I no longer needed his approval. I no longer needed him. It was around this time I started almost unconsciously to gather the threads of my experiences. Not just memories, but tangible things. Old birthday cards with generic messages, saved texts of his excuses, emails where my requests were brushed aside while Megan's desires were catered to. I didn't know why I was doing it, perhaps just to prove to myself that I wasn't imagining the pattern, that the neglect was real. Michael proposed shortly after graduation, a simple, heartfelt proposal on a wind-swept beach as the sun set. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated joy. As we began to dream about our future, the inevitable question of the wedding arose. Who would walk me down the aisle? Despite everything, a tiny masochistic flicker of tradition made me consider asking my father. One last chance. Perhaps this wedding would be significant enough for him to prioritize. I called him. To my utter shock, he sounded genuinely pleased, almost emotional. "Walk you down the aisle, Hannah, of course I'd be honored." For a moment, a tiny, fragile bud of hope unfurled in my chest, a hope I thought had withered and died years ago. But what I didn't know was that this was just the beginning of the ultimate betrayal, the setup for a truth bomb that would change everything. The ground beneath me was about to shift in a way I could never have predicted. My father's affirmative, "I'd be honored," echoed in my ears for days, a fragile melody of hope. Cautiously, I allowed myself to imagine it him by my side, a flicker of the father I remembered from my childhood. Wedding planning commenced, a joyful whirlwind orchestrated by Mom, David, Michael, and me. We scouted venues, tasted cakes, and I found the perfect dress. Simple, elegant, and decidedly me. There was an unspoken lightness in our preparations, a sense that perhaps, just perhaps, this significant life event might mend some of the broken pieces. Then about 6 months before our planned wedding date, the other shoe dropped, or rather Megan dropped it with Patricia's eager assistance. Megan, who had been in a long-term, on-again, off-again relationship, suddenly announced her own engagement. And not just an engagement, but a wedding date set just 3 weeks before mine. Aunt Sarah called me, her voice tight with disapproval. "Hannah, you're not going to believe this. Megan's getting married, and Patricia is insisting your father walk her down the aisle and get this pay for the entire extravagant affair. She's saying Megan needs this fairy tale and that it's her time to shine." The call from my father came a few days later. His voice was hesitant, laced with a familiar discomfort I knew meant he was about to disappoint me. "Hannah, sweetie, about the wedding." He cleared his throat. "There's been a bit of a development. Megan's getting married too, you see, and well, her wedding is just before yours." I waited, my heart turning to ice. "Patricia feels strongly, and I agree," he continued, the words tumbling out in a rush, "that as she's my stepdaughter and lives here, it's appropriate that I walk her down the aisle, and with her wedding being so close to yours and the expense, it just seems, well, it's going to be too much for me to do both. You understand, right, Hannah? Maybe David could. The line went silent as I absorbed the blow. It wasn't just a retraction, it was a demolition. The carefully constructed hope shattered into a million irreparable pieces. Understand. I finally choked out, my voice dangerously low. You gave me your word, Dad. You said you'd be honored. I know, and I am, but this is complicated, he stammered. Megan is very emotional about this. Patricia says it would break her heart, and you know Megan doesn't have her biological father around much. This was a new convenient narrative, as her biological father was a moderately successful businessman who, while not overly involved, was certainly not absent. So Megan's potential heartbreak is more important than mine. I asked, the cold fury rising. My actual heartbreak. Don't be dramatic, Hannah, he said, his tone shifting to annoyance, a clear echo of Patricia's influence. It's just how it has to be. The call ended, and I sat in stunned silence, the receiver still pressed to my ear. This wasn't just another instance of being overlooked. This was a deliberate, calculated severing. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. My father, Patricia, and Megan had in one fell swoop relegated my wedding, my milestone, to an afterthought, an inconvenience. But the truth bomb wasn't just his retraction. It was what followed, pieced together from a tearful, indignant call from Aunt Sarah a week later. She had attended a family dinner at my father's house, one I pointedly did not. Hannah. Aunt Sarah began, her voice trembling with anger. You need to know what's really going on. I confronted John after dinner. Patricia was there smirking. It turns out Megan and Patricia planned this. Megan wasn't even seriously considering getting married until she heard you were. Patricia convinced her to move things up to make sure her wedding was first grander and that your father was solely focused on her. My blood ran cold. And that's not all, Aunt Sarah continued. Patricia has been systematically poisoning John against you for years. She twists everything you say or do, makes you out to be ungrateful, demanding, jealous of Megan. She told John that you asking him to walk you down the aisle was just a way to upstage Megan. And John, he just absorbs it all. He's completely under her spell. He even admitted he's been giving Megan a hefty allowance for years, helped her with a down payment on her car things. He always told you he couldn't afford for your art camps. The full extent of the manipulation, the years of subtle and not-so-subtle sabotage, hit me with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't just my father's weakness. It was Patricia's calculated cruelty, Megan's willing complicity. They hadn't just neglected me, they had actively worked to undermine me to ensure I remained marginalized. The pain was immense, a deep, searing agony. But through it, a new clarity emerged. The fog of confusion and self-doubt that had clouded my life for so long began to dissipate, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. I saw them for who they truly were. My internal monologue shifted from bewildered hurt to steely resolve. They thought they could break me, erase me. They thought I would just quietly accept their scraps. They were wrong. He wasn't just an oblivious father. He was a willing accomplice in their campaign. And I would not let them win. The decision was instantaneous, born not of spite, but of profound self-respect. My father would not walk me down the aisle. He had forfeited that right 1,000 times over. That evening, I sat down with Mom and David. Tears streamed down my face as I recounted the conversation with Dad, and then Aunt Sarah's revelations. Mom held my hand, her eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and fury. David listened quietly, his expression hardening as I spoke. When I finished, I took a deep breath. David, I said, my voice thick with emotion but steady. You've been more of a father to me these past 10 years than he has in my entire life. You've been there for every success, every failure, every quiet moment. You've shown me what unconditional support looks like. Would you do me the honor of walking me down the aisle? David's eyes welled up. He reached across the table and took my other hand, his grip, firm and reassuring. Hannah, he said, his voice husky, it would be the greatest honor of my life. In that moment, a profound sense of peace settled over me. It was a healing balm on a raw wound. I had made my choice. I had chosen my family. Wedding planning continued, but with a new sense of purpose. Michael was my unwavering support, his anger on my behalf a fierce protective shield. We focused on creating a day that was about love, and the celebration of our chosen family. There would be no more begging for crumbs of affection from a table where I was clearly not welcome. The truth had been a bitter pill, but it had also been liberating. The anticipation wasn't for a confrontation, not yet. It was for a wedding filled with genuine love, a stark contrast to the drama and manipulation that had defined my father's side of the family. The power was shifting, and I was finally ready to claim it. The weeks leading up to my wedding were surprisingly serene. A quiet hum of happy anticipation replaced the knot of anxiety that had lived in my stomach for years. Mom, David, Michael, and Michael's wonderful family enveloped me in a cocoon of love and support. There was no communication from my father, Patricia, or Megan beyond a curt, formal RSVP indicating John would attend alone. Patricia and Megan, it seemed, had decided to boycott. Good riddance. Then, about a week before my wedding, Aunt Sarah called with news that was both shocking and in a twisted way validating. Megan's lavish father-funded wedding had taken place, and it hadn't gone quite as Patricia had orchestrated. "You won't believe this, Hannah," Aunt Sarah said, a note of grim satisfaction in her voice. Megan's biological father, Mr. High-powered businessman, showed up. Apparently, he caught wind of the scale of the wedding your dad was paying for and decided he wanted a piece of the spotlight. He swooped in, charmed Megan, who, let's be honest, has always been impressed by money and status, and insisted on walking her down the aisle. He even made a grand speech at the reception, taking all the credit. "What about Dad?" I asked, a strange detachment settling over me. "John." Aunt Sarah chuckled mirthlessly. He was relegated to a guest, stood at the back looking like a thundercloud. Patricia was furious, but apparently Megan's bio dad offered to pay for an even more extravagant honeymoon, so Megan and Patricia quickly shifted their allegiance. Your father, who poured a fortune into that wedding, was essentially benched. He looked utterly humiliated. Karma, it seemed, had a peculiar sense of timing. The man who had discarded his own daughter's wedding for his stepdaughter's glory had been in turn discarded at that very same event. The phone call from my father came 2 days later, just as I was finalizing seating charts with Michael. His voice was a wreck, shaky, desperate, laced with a self-pity that was utterly transparent. "Hannah, it's Dad." "I know," I replied coolly. "Listen about your wedding. There's been a change of plans on my end." He sounded like he was about to cry. "Megan's wedding, well, her biological father stepped in. It wasn't what we expected." "Oh." I kept my voice even. "So, I'm free Hannah. I mean, of course I should be the one to walk you down the aisle. I'm your father. I made a mistake before. I was under a lot of pressure. Please, sweetheart, say I can still do it. It would mean the world to me." His plea, so laden with his own bruised ego and sudden desperation, didn't evoke an ounce of pity, only a cold, clear certainty. The confrontation I hadn't planned for, but was now utterly prepared for, was upon me. We had arranged a small, informal rehearsal dinner the night before the wedding at a local restaurant. It was just for the wedding party our parents, Mom and David Michael's parents, and a few close relatives, including Aunt Sarah. My father had confirmed his attendance. This would be the place. He arrived late, looking disheveled and anxious. He immediately sought me out, his eyes pleading. Patricia and Megan were conspicuously absent. "Hannah," he began, trying to take my arm. I subtly stepped away. The low hum of conversation in our private dining area quieted as people sensed the tension. Michael moved to my side, his hand resting reassuringly on my back. David and Mom watched, their expressions supportive. "Dad," I said, my voice clear and steady, audible to everyone in the room. "We need to talk about you walking me down the aisle." A flicker of hope crossed his face. Yes, I told you I can do it. I want to do it." "No," I said simply. "You won't be. David is walking me down the aisle." His face crumpled. "But I'm your father." "I told you Megan's wedding was a misunderstanding." Was it, I countered, my gaze unwavering, or was it that you were perfectly happy to break your promise to me to sideline my wedding until you were sidelined at hers, until you were denied your moment of paternal glory? A shocked silence fell over the room. Aunt Sarah nodded slowly, a grimly satisfied look on her face. Michael's parents exchanged surprised glances but remained quiet, supportive of me. "That's not fair, Hannah." John sputtered, his voice rising. "Patricia, Megan, they needed me, and I didn't." I shot back, the years of suppressed pain finally finding their voice. "For 15 years, Dad, you chose them. You chose Patricia's manipulations and Megan's whims over your own daughter. You let them systematically erase me from your life, from our old home. You dismissed my achievements, my feelings, my very presence, while you poured your time, money, and affection into them." Each word was a carefully aimed dart finding its mark. His face paled. "You agreed to walk me down this aisle," I continued, my voice gaining strength. "You said you'd be honored. Then you snatched that promise away because Megan demanded it, because Patricia orchestrated it. You didn't care about breaking my heart, only about appeasing them. And now, only now that Megan and Patricia have shown you just how disposable you are to them when a better offer comes along. Now you remember you have another daughter. Now you want that father of the bride moment." "Hannah, please," he whispered, his eyes darting around the room, seeing the shocked and disapproving faces. He looked utterly pathetic. "No, Dad," I said, my voice softening slightly, not with pity but with finality. "This isn't about punishing you. This is about honoring the person who has consistently shown up for me, who has been a true father figure in my life when you chose not to be. David earned this right. You abdicated it years ago." David, who had been standing quietly beside Mom, stepped forward slightly, his expression one of quiet dignity and unwavering support for me. My father stared at me, his mouth opening and closing, but no words came out. The bustling confidence he usually wore around Patricia and Megan was gone, replaced by a raw public humiliation. He looked lost, defeated. The power dynamic had irrevocably, completely reversed. This wasn't just my triumph. It was the triumph of truth. "I love you, Dad," I said, and it was true, a sad vestigial love for the father he once was, or who I wished he had been. But I love myself more, and I deserve to be surrounded by people who genuinely cherish me on my wedding day. He finally sagged, defeated. He mumbled something incoherent, turned, and practically fled the restaurant. A beat of silence, then Aunt Sarah started a slow clap, which quickly spread among our friends and Michael's family. Mom rushed to hug me, tears in her eyes. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. Michael pulled me into his arms. "You were incredible," he murmured into my hair. The truth hadn't just set me free, it had allowed me to stand tall in my own power, surrounded by genuine love. Justice wasn't just served, it was a profound, deeply satisfying reclamation of my own narrative. The wedding tomorrow would be a celebration untainted and pure. The morning of my wedding dawned bright and clear, as if the universe itself was smiling on my newfound peace. The confrontation with my father the night before, while emotionally draining, had been a necessary catharsis. It had cleared the air, leaving behind a sense of resolute calm. As I got ready, surrounded by Mom, my bridesmaids, and Michael's warm, wonderful mother and sisters, there was an atmosphere of pure joy unmarred by any lingering shadows. My father did not attend the wedding. He didn't call, didn't text. His absence was a quiet acknowledgement of his defeat, a silent testament to the boundaries I had finally firmly established. Patricia and Megan, as expected, were also no-shows. Their absence was a relief, a final severing of toxic ties. Walking down the aisle on David's arm was one of the most profound moments of my life. His eyes shone with pride and a deep paternal love that needed no biological claim. He squeezed my hand reassuringly before placing it in Michael's. "Take good care of her son," he said to Michael, his voice thick with emotion. "She's one of a kind." As I stood beside Michael exchanging vows, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for this chosen family, for the love that had sustained me and brought me to this joyful precipice. The reception was a true celebration. Laughter and happy chatter filled the room. The guests who had witnessed or heard about the rehearsal dinner confrontation were overwhelmingly supportive. Many of Mom's friends who had known me since I was a child and had witnessed my father's slow drift offered quiet words of encouragement and admiration for my strength. Michael's family, who had only known the dad drama from my stories, now saw the reality and embraced me even more tightly into their fold. Aunt Sarah was radiant, raising a glass to Hannah, who always knew her own worth, even when others tried to make her forget it. Mom was a picture of serene happiness. She told me later, "Watching you with David today, Hannah, it was everything a mother could wish for her daughter. So much love, so much respect. I'm sad for John for what he's lost, what he threw away, but I'm bursting with pride for you." In the days that followed, there were a few attempts at damage control from the antagonist's camp, mostly relayed through Aunt Sarah, who had become my reluctant informant. Patricia apparently was spinning a tale to anyone who would listen about my cruelty and vindictiveness, painting me as an ungrateful daughter who had deliberately humiliated her poor, loving father. Megan, true to form, posted a series of passive-aggressive memes on social media about family drama and people who can't let things go, clearly aimed at me, but so vague as to be deniable. My father himself sent a single rambling email a week later forwarded by Aunt Sarah, as I had blocked his direct contact. It was a maudlin, self-pitying diatribe about his broken heart, how I had misunderstood everything, how he had always loved me, and how Patricia and Megan were good people who I had unfairly maligned. It was filled with excuses, not apologies. I read it once, felt a flicker of the old sadness, then deleted it. I didn't reply. My silence was my firmest boundary. The immediate change in family dynamics was stark. The toxic limb had been amputated. There was a lightness, a freedom in no longer having to navigate that minefield of forced interactions and painful disappointments. My family was now clearly defined. Mom, David, Michael, his wonderful parents and siblings, and supportive friends who had become like family. Aunt Sarah remained a cherished connection to my father's side, a bridge of sorts, but one I crossed on my own terms. Emotionally, I felt clean. The victory wasn't about revenge. It was about reclamation. I had reclaimed my narrative, my self-worth, and my right to happiness. There was a quiet sadness for the father-daughter relationship that never was, and perhaps never could have been, but it was overshadowed by an immense sense of peace and empowerment. I had faced the storm and walked out stronger, ready to build my life on a foundation of genuine love and mutual respect. The wedding wasn't an ending, but a beautiful, powerful beginning. 3 years passed in a whirlwind of love, creativity, and quiet joy. Life with Michael was everything I had ever dreamed of. A partnership built on mutual respect, unwavering support, and an abundance of laughter. Our little apartment, filled with mismatched furniture, Michael's architectural models, and my paint-splattered canvases, was a haven of peace. My art career, nurtured by this newfound stability and confidence, began to flourish in ways I hadn't dared to imagine. I had my first solo gallery show in a respected city gallery and then another. Critics started to notice my work, often commenting on the emotional depth and resilience conveyed in my figures. I even began teaching a few workshops, finding a surprising joy in helping others find their artistic voice. The most profound change, however, came with the arrival of our daughter Lily. Holding her tiny hand, looking into her innocent eyes, I understood the depth of parental love in a way I never had before. And watching David with her, Grandpa David, his face alight with adoration as he rocked her to sleep or showed her pictures in a book, filled my heart to bursting. He was the grandfather Lily would know, the one who was present, loving and utterly devoted. As for the antagonists, karma, as Aunt Sarah often dryly remarked, had continued its slow, methodical work. John, my father, was an increasingly isolated figure. Aunt Sarah reported that his health had taken a downturn. The stress of his strained marriage to Patricia and the profound regret over our estrangement had taken their toll. He was often lonely, his days punctuated by Patricia's sharp commands and Megan's infrequent duty-bound visits. He had apparently seen photos of Lily online shared by a distant cousin, and Aunt Sarah said he'd wept, finally understanding the true magnitude of what he had thrown away. He made a few tentative attempts to reach out around Lily's first birthday. A card sent via Aunt Sarah, a voicemail left on her phone, asking if he could perhaps see his granddaughter. I discussed it with Michael, Mom, and David. While a part of me felt a pang of sorrow for him, the wounds were too deep, the trust too irrevocably broken. I sent back a polite, firm message through Aunt Sarah. "Thank you for the well wishes. Lily has all the love and support she needs. Perhaps in time things may change, but for now we need to maintain our distance." The door remained closed, but not perhaps permanently locked, just protected. Patricia, according to Aunt Sarah, got the life she thought she wanted, the big house, the social status, but it was a hollow victory. Her relationship with John was reportedly one of convenience and quiet resentment. Many in their social circle had heard whispers of the wedding drama, and Patricia's carefully constructed facade of a loving matriarch had developed significant cracks. She was often described as brittle, controlling, and deeply insecure beneath her polished veneer. Megan's life was a mixed bag. Her marriage to the wealthy businessman had its ups and downs. While she enjoyed the material comforts, her husband was often absent, and she seemed to struggle with a sense of purpose beyond maintaining appearances. Her social media, once a stream of curated perfection, now occasionally featured vague complaints or passive-aggressive posts that hinted at dissatisfaction. She and I had no contact, and I felt nothing towards her. Not anger, not pity, just a distant indifference. My family, my true family, thrived. Mom and David were blissfully happy, their bond deepening with each passing year. They were doting grandparents to Lily, their presence a constant source of warmth and stability in our lives. Michael's family continued to be an incredible source of love and support, embracing Lily as their own. Our holidays were joyful, chaotic affairs filled with laughter, shared stories, and new traditions. Reflecting on my journey, the lessons were profound. I learned that family is not solely defined by blood ties, but by love, respect, and unwavering presence. I learned that my self-worth is inherent, not something to be earned or validated by others, especially not by those incapable of seeing it. Walking away from toxic relationships, even with a parent, is not an act of cruelty, but an act of profound self-preservation and love. The years of pain, the feeling of being invisible, had inadvertently forged an inner strength I hadn't known I possessed. It made me a more compassionate artist, a more empathetic friend, and I hoped a better mother. The most important lesson was the realization that I had the power to choose my family, to build a life filled with people who saw me, valued me, and celebrated me for exactly who I am. One afternoon, I was at a local park with Lily. She was taking her first wobbly steps, her face alight with a fierce determination. David was there, his camera out, capturing the moment, his cheers mingling with mine. As Lily stumbled and he swooped in to catch her, his laughter echoing hers, I felt a wave of such profound peace and gratitude. This was it. This was family. This was home. The shadows of the past had finally truly receded, leaving only the bright, hopeful light of the present. My story in the end isn't just about the pain of being the forgotten child. It's about the incredible strength we find when we choose to reclaim our own narrative. The deepest moral for me is that you cannot force love, recognition, or priority from someone who is unwilling or unable to give it. Your intrinsic worth is not diminished by their blindness. True family, whether born into or built, is the fertile ground where you are nurtured, respected, and allowed to flourish. It's about who shows up, not just in moments of celebration, but in the quiet, challenging times. Have you ever had to redefine what family means to you? What pivotal moments or realizations helped you navigate that difficult terrain? And what did you learn about yourself in the process? If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt like the other child, the overlooked soul, or had to courageously build your own sanctuary of support, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's create a community here, a space where our stories can intertwine and our voices can be heard and validated. Hit that like button if you believe in the resilient power of chosen family and the fierce beauty of self-worth, and please subscribe for more stories about overcoming adversity and forging your own unique path to happiness. Share this story with anyone who might need a reminder that they are not alone, that their feelings are valid, and that it is not only okay, but essential to put their own emotional well-being first. Remember, you deserve to be cherished, respected, and celebrated for the incredible individual you are. Don't ever let anyone, no matter their relation to you, dim your light or make you question your value. Build your tribe. Listen to the wisdom of your heart and trust that your story, with all its complexities and triumphs, truly matters. Let's continue to support each other on our journeys. Your voice, your experience, it's all welcome here. I'll be sharing more about my ongoing journey, my art, and other stories of resilience and reclamation very soon. Thank you for listening.